It's not like we hit the 70s button, you know, in the studio.
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Hi. 10th album.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with an easy question. Well, you've said about this album that you've been listening to a lot of Alice Cooper lately. What albums? What time frame? What period of him?
Constrictor.
Yeah.
No, not really. Well, I like that album, but that was more like a, what's it called? He's back, the man behind the mask. Friday the 13th. And I listened to the 70s catalog. No
Why?
big surprise, I guess.
How come?
It's just like it was very innovative, I think. But it was just by coincidence, to be honest. I just happened to buy a lot of Alice Cooper albums. I have all of them since I was a kid, pretty much. But I buy records and sell. And some of his early, like the late 60s, early 70s album, or the US original pressings had all these fancy things coming with them. Some of them quite rare, and sometimes I sell records to support my habit of buying records, so that I, you know, like I can pay the rent and everything.
So how many albums do you have now in your home?
I don't know, thousands,
Thousands.
shitloads. But I always buy, you know, buy so much. You know, every day I got to know the postman. He's coming up, you know, so soon I'm going to invite him in for coffee because he always delivers records to me every day. I get records.
What is the latest?
An English folk band called Wooden Horse, really good, very obscure, but strange that they were so obscure because it's really professional, good musicians. And also a super rare record by a guy called Zacharias from 1971. Cost me a lot of money.
Do you also have the album of Skell Hoagland, Hex Process?
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's go into that after within a few minutes. Alice Cooper album. What attracts you in his 70s work?
It's experimenting. It's music, very original. I never really, you know, you can't compare it to anything else. Alice Cooper had his own sound pretty early on when he was signed by Zappa to the bizarre record label, Straight, as they were called. He was, I mean, some type of dark hippie sounding, like flower power gone wrong, you know, in a haze of drugs and alcohol. So it's interesting for that sense, but there's a lot of noise on those first two albums, Easy Action and Pretty's For You. And then he kind of started finding his sound, I guess, with Love It to Death and Killer and School's Out and those, you know, the classic Runner records.
When did you listen to this album and when did you record, write the songs for this album?
Well, Alice Cooper's been constant in my life since I was a kid, pretty much. It's just that, like, you go through phases with some of these artists. You listen more to them for no particular reason, you know. All of a sudden, you end up playing Gary Moore for a month.
Because of his death, maybe?
No, well, yeah, when he died, I was like, because they've been so influential and so important for me, you might, you know, play some of his albums for that reason. Like, I remember after having read The Dirt, the Motley Crue book, I wanted to listen to Too Fast for Love. Okay. And it was like, I mean, it's not a very good record.
Yeah, but sometimes it's nice to hear when and how the songs were written, because then you can actually understand what the music does.
But I can really hear the Alice Cooper influence on this album.
You can't hear it?
No. I can't.
But this is a 70s sounding album.
It is a bit 70s sounding, but that's not deliberate, you know. It's not like we hit the 70s button, you know, in the studio. It's just recorded in a regular way. Good microphones, good drum kit, most of all good performance from us.
That's good. There's a quote that you've said, well, I've been building up to write for and participate on an album like this since I was 19. Well, you were 19 in 1993. 2 years before the first Opeth album. So
Well, the first album was done when I was actually turning 20 during the recording of the first album, and it was recorded in March '94.
'94, yeah. So you were saying you were building up to write this album. Can you explain?
Well, at the time when we did the first album, even if we were part of the whole extreme metal scene and we were just coming out as a band on our own, I pretty much stopped listening to a lot of that stuff. I was done with that stuff. And it was a magical time to be a record collector like I was. And I was well into record collecting at that time, going around the secondhand stores and picking up obscure 60s and 70s album by bands I never heard of.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at the sleeve, and it looks good, looking at what instruments are on there, like a mellotron and a Hammond, and the titles are good, you know. So I didn't pick out like some titles, some words in a title that will have me like, I'm not gonna buy that one. It's Boogie Woogie. If it's a song with Boogie Woogie, title with Boogie Woogie in it, if it's got Honky Tonk in the title, or most of all, if it's got coconut, the word coconut, I'm not gonna buy it. But other than that, I'm buying. I was buying lots of stuff that I didn't know what it was because it's so cheap. People were basically throwing away vinyl in the early '90s, exchanging them for CDs. So I could pick up the Genesis, King Crimson, all that stuff, and even more obscure stuff than that, for next to nothing.